everybody. Welcome to tonight's Regeneration, Culture, Environment Review and Scrutiny Committee. We have a lot of very important business tonight, so let's get started straight away. Do we have any apologies at all? Councillor Bone? Thank you.
Who I'm subbing for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kemp?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I apologise that Councillor Etheridge is unwell, and I understand that Councillor Doe may well be delayed.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Filmer? And yeah, so Councillor Williams will be here shortly, hopefully. So thank you very much. Okay, on to the next agenda item. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 14th of August 2025 as correct? Agreed. X. Thank you. I have no urgent matters tonight. So next on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Councillor Cook.
Yeah, just referring to agenda item 5 and specifically the petition which is in my ward. So just to say that I've looked at the site and I've indicated some support in the past. Just to confirm, this evening I'm coming in with an open mind and we'll listen to the debate before reaching any decision on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Is it okay if I just go ditto? In other words, it's in my ward, and we have looked at the area. Obviously, we take an interest, but I have come here with an open mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Peake and Councillor Cook there. Okay, with that, the first item of business is petitions, and there are 2 petition referrals tonight. So the first one relates to opposition to the removal of the wall at Lordswood Lane, Chatham. And Mr. Nick Phillips will be in attendance to speak on behalf of the petitioners, whilst officers will also be here to give information on the matter. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Phillips and invite you to come and speak at the chair just here. Just give you a few seconds, and just to, you can have a few minutes just to introduce the issue. And speak to us, and if you just press the green button, hopefully there will be a light on and that you can be heard. But thank you for coming to this committee, and if you want to introduce the matter, so then we can debate it as a committee.
Yep, that's fine. So Slade Close, Lordswood Lane, there's a brick wall at the minute that I think the deciding vote is you want to take it down. I don't believe that as a member of obviously the close that we want it taken down for the safety reasons, because obviously our kids play on the green. It's a close, it's a cul-de-sac, you take that away. I think there was a budget between £18,000 to £20,000 to rebuild the wall. I don't believe that the wall needs to be rebuilt. It just needs to be structured, potentially obviously saving the cost. But for everyone that's around there, we all have families, we'll have small kids, and summer holidays after school, they all play on the greens outside the properties, and you take that away, there's no safety there. Cars can come there, people can walk across. It's then not a close. You're then opening us up for, theft, anything really, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Did we want an introduction from officers on this matter, just to introduce the situation from that point of view before I open up to debate? Sorry, Nick, can you just...
There we go. Through time, unfortunately, any of the drawings that were submitted to, I would imagine that would have been Chatham Council at the time, there is no record as to what purpose the wall actually serves. It's an open-ended wall. It starts on Dargits, wraps round the roundabout and goes up Lordswood Lane to the end of Slade Close. It doesn't wrap around the properties at all. It just finishes. There is a public footpath that runs literally next to it. So the only thing we can think of that there may have been some kind of aesthetic purpose in the original build. For it to be determined a highway asset, just the fact of it being on the highway land doesn't necessarily make it a highways asset, unfortunately. It would have to be retaining at least 1.5 metres of soil for it to be as such. In all our searches for who would actually own it, look after it, be it MCH Homes or come under Norse, etc., no one else has any details on it, hence why we carried out the principal inspection due to the fact of its deterioration and the potential harm to passing public as well as residents in the area. That's why also it's not a vehicle restraint system as well that has come up before. It's not built to the quality that would be needed to stop a vehicle going through it, as evidenced by 2 scar marks that over the years have been rebuilt. So unfortunately, due to the maintaining this wall, the demolition is around, just over the £20,000, but to actually rebuild it to a wall standard, let alone it being a retaining wall or a vehicle restraint system, is you're going to be up to £150,000 because we'd have to demolish it, redo the foundations, and then rebuild as well. And unfortunately, that kind of expense is not something I can warrant with the looking after all the other structures around Medway.
Thank you. Did anyone, members, want to come in at this point at all? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly the wall is doing a job of sorts because the petitioner says there have been 2 incidents involving vehicles that have hit the wall. So the wall has had a purpose, maybe not the intended purpose, but it has had the purpose. I mean, I think this council's invested a lot in safety of children, particularly through the Safer Street schemes, where it's installed cameras to make sure children are protected, even where there hasn't been any incidents of children being injured by vehicles. In this case, there is obviously an issue. Children do play in that area, and whilst I accept that the council is financially strapped at the moment, something should really be put in place rather than just demolishing the wall. I don't want it on my conscience if we demolish the wall and then a child is injured because a car has gone over the curb and injured someone. So I would hope that the committee would support the petitioner and maybe ask officers to go away and work up a scheme that meets the needs of the community and continues to protect the children who play in that part of Lordswood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd echo what Councillor Lawrence has said, and it does concern me about the children's safety. Have we looked at pricing up to put a safety barrier, the type that you put down the middle of motorway or around an edging, something like that, that will overcome it? I'm sure that sort of money wouldn't come, that sort of job wouldn't come to the sort of money you're quoting.
We carried out a road risk assessment on the road, as it's a 30-mile-an-hour road. According to the assessment, the only precautions they said was to look at, is the white lining sufficient? Is there clear and visible speed signs there, as it's low priority? We did look originally back in towards the end of 23, beginning of 24, and it was offered to the residents that we would remove the wall and put a suitable VRS system in, not one of these that looks like motorway ones. It'd be more indicative to the area. Unfortunately, that was refused by them. I was told it's not tall enough, children would still go over it, under it, and it was refused.
Just thinking about this a little bit more laterally. So I think what I understand from the petitioner and what's going on here is that this is about creating a safe environment for children to play in, as well as looking at the potential road danger here. So I'm just thinking, is there anything in terms of actually, because this is about having a kick around, being able to play, badminton, tennis, football, obviously. As when looking at Street View, you can see the goal set up. Is there any potential funding on a slightly multi-agency level that would look, also at the potential sports benefits? And there may be other funders, I'm not sure, out there who charitable organisations that might be interested in the welfare of young people in Medway, and particularly in Chatham. That actually it's not just an assets and structure issue, it's a play and recreation issue as well.
Chair, if I could comment, it's really about protecting children from road users. Unfortunately, we know, as I was driving along Pier Road today, some idiot went past me at about 70 miles an hour, and it doesn't matter about all the white lines in the world and the signage. Unfortunately, there's always some idiot who's going to be driving way beyond the speed limit and will cause an incident. I support Councillor Filmer's idea about working up a scheme. I think we owe it to residents to actually at least go away and try again. I hear what the officer's saying around something that was offered in the past and it was refused. But at the end of the day, if the council's got its duty bound to take the wall down, then I think at the end of the day, I think the residents at this point would probably be happy to have something back in its place.
Councillor Campbell.
Sorry if I missed this information, but is there any deterioration to the wall currently? Is there any damage to it, or is it purely being pulled down because it's not owned by anybody and nobody's kind of responsible for it?
So the wall itself, comes under no one. It's a bit of a no man's land, unfortunately. It is on highways land due to the fact of there is a grass area that it's built on between the road and the footpath. That does come under highways, the maintenance of that land. But as the wall does not meet any highways regulations in being classified as a highway structure, it's outside our remit. Anything we do put in place, obviously, something we looked at was a 6-foot fence panel system to go up, but anything that goes up, we need to know who would maintain it. Again, it is not a highway structure, so unless I'm told to put something there, I'm trying to think of a better way to say it, we're a kind of a bit of a standstill in what we can do there.
Thank you. Thank you, I do understand that. I'm wondering what's triggered this? What's triggered the need to take down this wall now? Is that purely the fact that it's not under your purview, it's under nobody's purview? What I'm asking for is currently, is there any deterioration or anything to the wall that's causing concern?
Yes, sorry. There was, back in 2023, it was reported to the council through our online service that someone had noticed the walls leaning to one side. It was asked by us to look into it. We had a principal inspection carried out on there, and that's where we found that the foundation in one area is going, hence the leaning, but the entire 180 metre length of it, there is a lot of brickwork degradation where literally the bricks themselves are crumbling and falling out. So if a vehicle doesn't hit them, given long enough, you will find things will fall off of it, unfortunately.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to establish, as in it needs to happen now, or was it just sort of a bureaucratic thing to take it down? So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And next I have Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just following on from your excellent idea, supported by Councillor Lawrence, about at least looking into it. Obviously, there's always a case about we have limited resources or whatever, but surely this is something that we should be able to find funding for. And please don't misunderstand my comments when I say how irritating it is to hear. We had this at Medway Matters, also a completely different subject, and it couldn't be particularly said, who is responsible? Now, could be completely talking out of turn. I've got no idea this is possible. Take a situation like this. Historically, you cannot identify who is responsible. Is there a possibility, I've got no idea about the process, where the council, whoever it is, legal department, says, okay, we don't know historically, but we have decided it's that department, that budget. So if we can identify that and then link that to the possibility of getting funds, there can be government funding still, I presume, for specific projects, then surely that is worth pursuing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peake. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, very technical, tiny point, but I was curious when I read on page 21 that there'd been a couple of repairs, and I wondered why the repairs were done and what budget they were done and who did those repairs and the precedent that set. Thank you.
I'll come in on that, Councillor. We don't know who's repaired the wall, in all honesty. We know the land is owned by MHS. They've denied all responsibility for the wall, but they are the landowner, but it's highway maintained green space because we cut the grass, so it falls to our responsibility. In response to you, Councillor Peake, in terms of unregistered land, if there's a risk to the public and it's on the highway, then that responsibility will fall to us. It's our statutory duty to protect people. So it's a cost burden that we're having to pick up, even though it's not a highway asset, unfortunately. So, and that's generally the case. If it's on unregistered land, then it would fall, and it's on the highway and it poses a risk, then that would come to us to look after.
Did you want to come in directly in this point, Councillor Campbell? Yeah, okay.
On that point, I'm just struggling to imagine how nobody can know who did the work. That just sounds insane to me. So would they not have needed some kind of permits to do the work on the highway? Somebody would have issued some kind of sign-off or permit. I just can't understand how nobody knows who did the work. Right.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? It's pretty Medway.
That is the general rule, that any works on the highway would require a permit. But unfortunately, we've gone back to our records, which date back to 2004. We have got very limited records from the inception of Medway Council in '98. So, and MHS have no records to say that they repaired it. So it is a bit of an anomaly, and we don't know who has repaired it. But 2 repairs have been carried out on that wall. And as my colleague states, it's started to deteriorate, and that's why we're now having to look at it seriously in terms of taking the wall down. Appreciate that's the cheapest option, and there are other alternatives that we've looked into. And we've looked at a fence, partial removal of the wall. We've also haven't actually priced it up yet, but potentially hoop barriers to provide some extra protection, improved signage, road lining. So we are looking at other options, but we've just priced out the main ones of the cost. But it's not going to be cheap, even to remove a couple of courses of bricks on the wall and re-stabilise. It's still £75,000.
Thank you. Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you. That was actually my question. Since the fence is next to MHS land, have we contacted MHS to see if they want to take responsibility to try? The other thing I was thinking, is there a way to have some community fund project to, I know it's not ideal, but a parish fund or community fund project to build the wall there?
We can certainly look into that options, but I think it's important to note that there's lots of amenity grass areas around Medway that aren't fenced off, where children play on those greens as well. It's not unique just to this particular road. There's many lots of amenity green space throughout the whole of Medway, and they used to have the no ball game signs on there, didn't they, years ago, to stop children playing on them. But children do play on them, but they're not all fenced off.
My last question is, since it seems like the option 1 is the option that the council wants to go with, and it's not ideal, is there going to be a monitoring after that to make sure that safety remains a priority and it's a wall area,
Yes, absolutely. That would be the
wall incident area?
Yeah, that would be the case. It would be under monitoring. And as I say, the reason for the funding of this particular one, we've got a list here of all of our other bridges that require work. I mean, the Fairview Avenue Bridge is £460,000, and that's quite a priority. It serves the wider community, and we certainly don't want to be shutting the Link Road on Hove Lane and not carrying out repairs on that road when it leads up to the motorway. It's a key strategic route. So it's a case of prioritising what work we have and what other structures we have in our asset database that actually require significant work at significant cost. And unfortunately, this is why we're looking at the option just to remove the wall here.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak in this debate at this time? Is there anyone? Okay. So I think so the way that I'm seeing this response set out is the council would like to proceed with option 1. But what I'm feeling from members is that that's not necessarily the favoured option. I think we're looking to more towards. Now, is from the committee, is there any, which of the other options do we think are favoured out of the ones listed? I think that's the question. Is it? Because the feeling I have of the committee is that the committee is very sympathetic to the residents' argument here.
Chair, I just wonder if we could pick up, sorry to interrupt you, just pick up Councillor Filmer's idea of maybe another system. If that is more expensive than the fencing system, I think we would then go with the fencing system, because it actually does put a barrier in, and we can plant, you can plant up on one side of the fence to actually over a period of time to hide the fence. But look, I totally get the fact the council's got no money, and Karen makes a really good point about other assets that need maintaining. But if I can suggest a proposal that the officers go away in a short period of time, price up at the option that Councillor Filmer suggested. If that option is more expensive than the fencing option, then the fencing option would be the one subject to a bit of consultation with residents, which I'm sure the local ward councillors would be happy to undertake.
And obviously MHS as well would also be
absolutely.
another interest.
Actually, I've got a meeting with MHS soon. I could actually raise it with them at that meeting as well.
Okay. So, Councillor Cook, have we got enough for... I mean, are there any voices who wish to dissent from that option? Because that's where I feel we are as a committee. Have you... So I'll just give you a few seconds just to formulate that. Thank you. Oh, actually, this is part 1, so should I take that after I hear the second petition? Okay, let's move the business on this half of the petitions report.
So I've just summarised that as we're requesting that officers explore alternate options through wider partnership. Does that suffice? No.
It's to propose further investigate the viability of further options that include fencing and planting that can be going forward, and to work in conjunction with MHS and other interested stakeholders, including the local neighbourhood and community.
Which include fencing and planting. Okay.
Councillor Cook, I think it's what we're looking for is something around option 2. But, you know, for officers to do that bit of work around, is there another alternative to fencing at that sort of budget?
Councillor Peake.
Yeah, I can. Obviously, this is not that straightforward. Option 2 is obviously where this falls, but there's just very few words there. If we could have something that keeps it open, I think that's what Councillor Cook was looking for. I'm trying to guess here, but we want wording that allows some flexibility over potential choices. Does that work?
Absolutely. We've just bought Councillor Cook the extra 15 seconds to write that up in a cogent form. So I'm going to pass to my Vice Chair now for a proposal on this half of the petitioner's report.
Okay, so we're requesting that officers explore alternate options which include fencing and planting, working in conjunction with MHS and wider partners.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us as a committee, and we hope we can get the right solution for your community. Thank you. So next I would like to call up Mrs. Pat Cooper to formerly of this parish, I believe. So you've got about, if you'd like a few minutes just to introduce your petition and then we'll start.
Yeah, good evening, members. Yes, this is a petition that regarding road safety and signage and crossing for the residents of Snothurst House and the wider area, I've since found out. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee for allowing me to speak, and thank Councillor Peake for presenting the petition to full council. I'm speaking on behalf of residents of Snothurst House and with support from MHS about this petition. I moved to Snothurst House at the end of March, being made homeless by my landlady selling the house I lived in Gillingham for 35 years. Not long after I moved, one of the residents was in a stressful incident when she was, in her words, nearly killed by trying to cross the road to the bus stop. She was shaken up and I was asked if I could do anything to help, hence the petition. Members will have seen the petition and read the petition and my letter and the reply to the petition by myself asking for a review. I recently watched elderly residents of Arnhem Drive who live in the houses on the bank opposite the bus stop, which incidentally has a very bad roof leak, trying to cross busy Wayfield Road to also access the bus stop. We have had double yellow lines painted outside our gates adjacent to Malta Avenue, but vehicles still need to park close to us because carers are needed for a lot of our residents, and this restricts the vision of us trying to cross the road. We have to walk past the parked cars and wait for vehicles zooming up round the bend coming from the Luton area and the other way from Walderslade Road. Also, MHS vehicles also park outside our gates. Our car park cannot accommodate all these vehicles when work has to be done at Snothurst House. It has been suggested that Malta Avenue has designated crossing points here. There are drop curbs for the use of residents in the houses and in the wrong direction to the bus stop, but nothing to say they are designated crossing points, not formally marked out, and not visible to the traffic at all. The road signs, however, thankfully, have now been updated and put up closer to us. They were neglected and invisible before. Slow markings are to be rewritten, but only on one side of the road coming from Luton have had slow marking on the road before. Are they now going to be painted on both sides of the road, and where? Would it be possible to have a speed counter on the road? What is the speed of Wayfield Road? How long ago was the safety record done, and has there ever been a speed counter done? I have witnessed also off-road bikers on this road as well. The residents of Snothurst House are mostly vulnerable. Some do use the bus stop, including myself, and some use walkers to help them cross the road and need to be safe to do so. And a safe crossing is needed here. And incidentally, we have had arrival buses, and not only those, other buses, going up and down Wayfield Road because Luton Road has been closed and it's been an absolute nightmare with the traffic. So that is causing another difficulty. And an arrival bus crashed into the wall at the end of top of Wayfield Road on the roundabout the other day. So in all, the traffic up there is very, very busy, and it has been extra busy with the arrival buses. So members, I'm asking for your support to have some kind of road safety so that we can access the bus stop on the other side of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any officers want to provide an initial response to that before we go to debate? Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, pleased to hear that the issue of the signage and the road markings, that's all in hand, because that is my understanding of the case, and that certainly will be done as soon as possible. When I became aware of this petition, I did hold a site visit with my team on sorry. My mic is on. Can you hear me okay now? Yeah, okay. Yes, I held a site visit with my team at this location. And I think it is fair to say that facilities for pedestrians aren't as good as we would like them to be. I think that's fair, because as a council we promote sustainable travel, and it's a clear priority for us to have pedestrian routes that are as convenient and as safe as possible for our residents and our communities. So in this location, I feel that we should be looking at how we can make some improvements to pedestrian facilities and the environment for pedestrians there. As you've alluded to, it's not straightforward. It's not a straightforward location, and there are some challenges that we need to face. As you said, it's clearly a very busy road. There's lots going on. There's bus stops, on-street parking, blue badge parking bays, bends in the road, and a carriageway that is probably at its minimum width in terms of carrying the type and the volume of traffic that it does. But notwithstanding that, I think it's right that we look into this and think about what we could do. So my commitment is to add this to our work programme for further investigation and to look at some design options there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to indicate to speak? Otherwise, I'm happy. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Have we considered a zebra at this location?
We did, but not in any detail. So my proposal is to take a thorough investigative design on this one, so we can really look into the options. So that could be part of the considerations, but at this stage, it hasn't gone beyond that sort of conceptual idea.
So the response at the moment is we're going to add to the work programme. We'll look at the feasibility of this location, investigate what the collision statistics are, look at how that aligns with some of our broader programmes and policies, and eventually hopefully come up with some type of solution here, because I think there's a pretty clear case there in terms of a demand that needs to be served. Looking at, you know, some of the pedestrian accesses there and desire lines to and from bus stops, absolutely, you know, I don't think it's necessarily fair for people to have to walk 350 metres down the road to cross over a signalised junction. Luckily, there is a bus stop there, but, you know, yeah, I'm heartened to hear that. Our Councillor Lawrence coming there.
Chair, if we could have a timeline on that, so residents are assured it will get looked at when it will get looked at. I'm just wondering, is there any, I'm not sure I've actually even driven down that road, but is there any options to put some traffic calming in there that would actually slow? What I'm concerned about is you've got elderly residents living in that area, might not be quite as quick at running across the road as they probably once were. I hope you don't mind me saying that. But if there was a way of calming the traffic near that junction with a chicane or something, I don't know the layout, is whether that's an option as well. Thank you.
I think at this stage, everything is open to consideration. So the only thing we need to bear in mind is that there are constraints on this road, lots of constraints, and on-street parking is a big issue there. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we've got pretty much a blank canvas to have a look at various options there.
So in terms of work programme, did you envisage that a work programme would be essentially the next financial year, so from after April, or is there spots on the work programme this financial year?
I wouldn't rule out officers being able to start looking at it this year, but my main commitment will be to add this to the work programme for next financial year, bearing in mind we are some way through the current year and there's an existing programme of work that we're working through.
I see Councillor Peake.
Yeah, can I just say how pleased I am with your response? The initial reaction to the petition, most probably standard, did seem to be quite dismissive. So I'm glad there's now an open mind to look at this again. And for those who don't know the area, there is quite a considerable traffic issue, and like you used the word idiot earlier, that can apply in that area as well. The way people accelerate and speed up is, yeah. So we don't, and also it does need to be borne in mind, when you get older, the mobility, when that becomes such an issue, We don't want them to have to walk too far to then to be able to cross safely, because no matter how we may think, oh, it's good for them to walk or whatever, there's a good chance they won't go out at all, and we don't want that either. So I'm really pleased with your open-mindedness and looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members want to speak on this at all? If not, I will pass to the Vice Chair for a proposal there. So that would include adding this to the work programme.
Yeah, so shall I do the full proposal? So the committee notes the petition responses and appropriate officer actions in paragraph 4.1 of the report. The committee has considered the petition referrals are requested at section 6 of the report and the Deputy Director of Places response. We've discussed the proposal for 6.2, and for 6.3 we've added that we agree with officers' proposals to add to the work programme in the next financial year and look at design options for workable solutions.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see you back. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to agenda item 6, which is the Medway Green Space Bereavement Memorial Policy. Bob Diamond will introduce this report.
Thanks, Chair. Evening, everyone. I've brought this report to this committee prior to it going to Cabinet to ensure that I can get the views of the committee on the proposals to establish a bereavement memorial policy. As tends to happen over time, we have different policies being used in different places. So we have obviously our cemeteries and crematorium have a policy on memorial plaques. We then have a different policy with different guidance on our green spaces, and then we have a third one on our highways. So we have different prices, different quality, different types of memorials you can have. And what I'm trying to do is coordinate this into a single policy that allows us to bring some consistency and some transparency. And if I can just touch on the reason why it's so pertinent to me at the moment is one that came up in Green Spaces this summer, where I had a request from parents for a memorial to their daughter, sorry, pardon, is their son, in one of our parks. And currently we only allow memorials on green spaces in half a dozen of our parks. Quite rightly, the family said to me, why is that? There is no record of why we don't allow this in this particular park. It's just something that has evolved over time. And I quite rightly couldn't say to him, just it's because that's our policy. It feels right to kind of look at everything again, do a proper audit across our green spaces, so that there may be a very sensible reason for this, but equally there may be just one of those things that's emerged over time, and I want to be able to kind of bring it into consistency in the approach we take. I also, as I've been going through looking at this, it's clear that the requests of families, through the conversations I've had with stakeholders like hospices, the types of memorials are evolving, and part of the policy that I'm suggesting is that we set up a stakeholder group. So rather than it being the council saying, this is what we're going to permit, we are talking to the stakeholders who probably more closely associated with families in these situations, such as hospices, such as funeral directors, to understand those needs and so that we can adapt this policy over time. And I've suggested that we look to update the policy every 3 years to make sure that we are reflecting the requirements of our residents as they will evolve over time. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any members? Councillor Filmer got there first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that approach, Bob, is probably the best way to go. We must be consistent, and it's a very, as I know, a very touchy time when something happens and someone dies, and to be told you can't put something there, a park where they used to spend a lot of time or done something, if we're consistent across all of Medway, I think your idea of a working party, sorting out what we can do and what people can't do, is got to be the best way forward.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to support option 5 as set out. I think for me, the issue about renewing these memorials is, can we some way find a way of creating a central register for all of these? And also, you know, in the modern day, email addresses, we could update, send emails out every 5 years to the family member who created a memorial to say, your 5 years is up, there's another 5, whatever. I think that would be really useful. And in terms of the working party, it'd be good to make that cross-party, because I noticed the portfolio holders going on there, or someone serious. So if we could make that a cross-party, that I think would, you know, we'd be very happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Cook, and then I'll go to Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Just a couple of kind of check-in points around just sort of checking people's rights and the justice, really, because I agree, I think it makes sense. I can see the arguments put forward. I'm slightly worried about reliance on digital technology, particularly if it's older members of society that we are wanting to ensure that they haven't kind of just had an email and they couldn't access an email, or people that haven't got access. And also what happens if we, after 10 years, don't get a response, and then someone comes out of the woodwork in a year or two's time and you know, it's a long-lost relative or something. And also, just there was a tiny bit that I wanted to check in about approved stonemasons working in cemeteries, and that makes sense to me, and I can see why, but I just wanted to check the costing of that we're making sure that the cost of those people aren't higher than someone else might be able to find there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. The stonemasons is the existing policies. I'm more than happy to find out what the prices are we charge. It's done by a bereavement team rather than anything that I'm doing through Green Spaces, but happy to find an answer to that. I think you're right on both on the digital technology side, and obviously we will look at the range of options. Our ambition is to make it as easy and relevant for people in whichever way they want to communicate with us, rather than trying to make it difficult to. And absolutely, I'm totally aware of what I don't want to do is risk offending anybody through the lease process. I'm guided by bereavement colleagues who say it works very well, and they've got an established system, and I want to make sure that we replicate that so that people have that consistency through it. But I totally get that, because the last thing I want to do is offend somebody, particularly, you know, if they've got a memorial to a young child who may be reaching what would have been a significant birthday or something at that time. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
So just for clarification, so the bit thank you for that, particularly the second point. But the first point is just making sure that our approved stonemasons' prices are kept in line and people don't have to pay a premium for using the approved.
Councillor Campbell, please.
Yes, I'm also happy to support option 5 here, and I echo what everyone said. It's so important to be consistent. I've actually spoken to people who have kind of then started informally sharing, what did you do? Oh, did you get that? You got a 10-year term. Oh, I paid this much. And then it just causes a lot of confusion, and people feel quite victimized at such a vulnerable time. So I think it's really important to be consistent, but very, very sensitive, because it's a difficult time. I can see that. I think the working group is a very good idea to have people advising you. I can see you've got Medway Diversity Forum there, and they're excellent at this, but I just we need to make a concerted effort to reach all kinds of religious groups in this, no matter how small and niche they are, and there will be some groups who might be a bit closed off, and I think this is a very important stage in life, and it's an opportunity for us to connect them with wider services and to present different options to them rather than their very particular traditions that they may have. So I think Medway Diversity Forum will be excellent at this, but we should at every opportunity make sure that we are kind of really identifying those hard to reach communities and getting them involved in this as well.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. I totally agree. My aim is to try to make it as inclusive as I can, so any guidance that people can give me on who to speak to, I'm more than happy.
Thank you. Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Actually, a couple of my questions have already been asked. But I want to ask about the memorial trees that we're going to plant in the park. Realistically, how many trees are we looking at?
So I'm having an audit undertaken by Medway North of how many trees we can plant in each of our parks, obviously both related to this and also related to our climate change agenda. So I will be able to advise per park in the coming months. I don't have that information on every park at the moment. I think I've got about half a dozen of them done so far. So it will vary from park to park. And what we're looking at is that the positioning of each of the trees will also, if we still want to do benches, each position of a tree will allow a bench to be put under a tree if that is one of the things we want to consider.
Okay, and just to come back, obviously we have to wait for the trees to grow, or are they going to be planted already grown trees? How does it work?
So I envisage, as I say in the report, that we may end up with various alternatives. So some people may want to plant a tree, and absolutely we will, wherever possible, we would want to encourage that. Some people may want a plaque on an existing tree because it has particular memories, and equally on what I'm trying to do is find a way of facilitating that as well. So I'm trying to give as many different options for our residents because I recognise that there needs to be a variety of options because there will be different reasons and different attributes to different people.
And as well, just a couple more questions. When it comes to the funds collected from that memorials, are they going to be ring fenced for the parks themselves? Are they going to be used only for the parks, or are we going to use it for anything else?
That's a kind of decision for Cabinet and Finance in terms of how they hypothecate money or don't hypothecate budgets. So I don't have any kind of involvement in that decision making.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Peake.
Yeah, sorry if I'm not getting this. On page 27, when it says, where is it, introduction of a 10-year time limit on memorial plaques, what is the thought process behind having a limit and why 10 years, please?
That is the time limit we currently have in our cemeteries and crematorium. It doesn't mean that they are automatically removed. It just means that people are given the option if they wish to have it for a further 10 years, or they can have the plaque back if they want. I think, if I'm honest, it's because over time we need to allow for future generations to also have the opportunity to put plaques in place. One of the things we found, going back to the example I gave on the green spaces side, is we have in certain parks half a dozen benches that have plaques on them that are there permanently. Other people are coming along saying, we want one, and we're going, okay, well, unfortunately you can't have one because those 6 slots have been taken up in perpetuity. So it's trying to accept that we want to enable future generations to also have the opportunity to put plaques there. So it's introducing some kind of time constraint into the process.
I'm just working with my own thought process. When both my parents died, basically my brother and myself wanted to spend as little money as possible because that's what I see was a waste. But I do appreciate, for a lot of people, it's part of their grieving process and their well-being to have something like this. So I do get that. Therefore, it's important that they can have it where they actually want it to be. So like you said at the beginning, if it's a park which they used a lot, to have the option to have it, say, on a bench where they were, to me, makes sense. I do like the idea on a bench rather than a gravestone. This is personal choice, or on a living thing like a tree. I get all of that. I just want to make sure that with option 5, I've understood this properly, that option 5 covers option 4, and option 4 covers option 3, and option 3 it retains existing policies. So the option 5 basically is all above plus that. Is that, have I understood that correctly, please?
Option 5 is looking at how we coordinate existing policies so that we have some consistency into those policies, and with the addition of a working group involving stakeholders from the community to help understand what the policies should be in the first place, and then how we keep those updated every 3 years.
Thank you very much. I see now for Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just to say that I can support option 5. I think it's very sensible to bring all the different policies from the different cemeteries and bits and pieces around to bring under one umbrella, one policy, which is brilliant. And I think the working party is a good idea. We won't leave anybody out. Everybody put their input, and hopefully it keeps everybody happy. So I will be supporting option 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. And I think you'll find complete agreement on the committee in particular the option 5 of making sure that we're really seeing community involvement in such a sensitive and important subject for Medway residents, and also it's just useful for scrutiny just to be clear to residents watching again, because I have seen on social media people confused about leases and people finding it very upsetting and not being aware. But again, quickly doing some research, is actually fairly standard to have a 5 or 10-year lease on memorials. But it's obviously got to be done in a sensitive and appropriate manner. But yeah, we a very useful paper to come to us tonight. So I'm going to pass to the Vice Chairperson for a proposal, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the committee's asked to submit any comments to Cabinet, which we've done, on a proposal to formulate a new Medway Green Spaces Bereavement Memorial Policy 26 to 28, as set out in option 5, to include the proposals as set out in sections 1.2 to 1.7 of the report. Thank you.
It's just that addition of making that working party cross-party. Thank you.
Yep, so we've got the making the working party cross-party, so also then the comment about the price checking of the stonemasons as well, I think was the other action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Excellent. And is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to the next agenda item, which is on the task group for air quality, public transport and active travel. So Nicola is just going to briefly introduce this, and I know some relevant officers are here to take any questions.
Thank you, Chairperson. This report sets out the work and recommendations of the task group on air quality, public transport and active travel. This is a cross-cutting review covering both this committee's and the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee's remits. The task group met on several occasions, taking each review strand in turn. This included a stakeholder event to gather intelligence on the review strands and a roundtable discussion with Camden Council, as well as meetings with relevant officers to gather evidence and formulate recommendations. The recommendations can be found on pages 64 to 65, 81 to 83 and 92 to 94 of the agenda pack. Following tonight, the review will also be presented to the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee, following which the comments of both committees, together with the report and recommendations, will be submitted to Cabinet on 18th of November for formal consideration and approval. Ian Gilmore and Michael Edwards are present tonight to answer any questions that members may have on the report and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Is there any members got any comments? Anyone wants to speak at this time? Councillor Lawrence.
Well, Chair, we had a working party that discovered that our air quality is not very good. I mean, we didn't really need the working party to do that, but I suppose the working party has managed to introduce LTNs, but they're not going to be called LTNs. I suppose they're an LTN light. So, as predicted, I've actually done a bit of research into some of the statements made in the report. I think I was particularly struck by the fact that in the report, our NO2 particular is already below the accepted standard of 40, is it 40 microns? Is that the, so at the moment, our air quality, our worst air quality is 38 microns in Medway, and actually it's going down. The research seems to suggest that particularly as diesel cars are retired, that actually air quality is improving, and there's also been incremental improvements in air quality of petrol vehicles. So if we did nothing else, actually our air quality in Medway would improve. For me, the issue seems to be our public service vehicles, which tend to be older, diesel, and also vehicles involved in heavy haulage and delivery. I think in Medway, I'm struck by the fact that every time there's a problem on the M2, all the traffic pulls through Medway from Junction 4, turns right at the bottom of Hoathway and then goes into Raynham, and then out to Sittingbourne in that direction. So for me, anything you do in creating an LTN or an LTN light or a low speed zone is going to make zero difference until we solve the problem of traffic on the M2 and when there are blockages, which there are pretty much every day. Anyone who knows that area will have appreciated the increase in traffic coming down Hoathway. An LTN isn't going to make a bit of any difference at all. I just noted that one of the AQMAs is Raynham, and of course Raynham is a problem because not just to do with the traffic, but to do with the road layouts. You know, traffic is caught in about 3 different places through Raynham, as my colleague Councillor Kent will attest to, and therefore you've got heavy traffic sitting there trying to get through traffic lights over mini roundabouts. So any action in the Raynham area isn't going to make any difference because the traffic is already moving about 6 miles an hour during peak times. I was very interested in the referral to existing LTNs, and I just wonder if officers considered the fact that LTNs in big cities are very different to what we have in Medway, particularly with regard to my esteemed colleague, the Chair's favourite subject, which is bus provision. You know, bus provision in London, underground provision in London is very different to what we have in Medway. You know, bus usage in Medway has still not returned to pre-COVID levels. People do not want to use buses. That's been proven. And any LTN or any intention to block the road to improve air quality will just force traffic into other roads. Nowhere in the report can I see the impact of LTNs that you've examined and what's been the impact of roads adjacent. That's just not being covered. It's almost like a hidden, what are you hiding, guys? That's what I'd be asking you, is what's been the impact on air quality in those roads adjacent? I also note you didn't include the West Dulwich scheme in your analysis, which has been a total nightmare. Residents having to fight their local authority because the local authority basically lied and been caught out lying, providing lots of fake information, and it's causing absolute chaos. No cost for providing electric vehicle buses. Absolute fortune. We can't even provide the power to charge electric vehicle buses, and it's within your report. I couldn't see within the recommendations, the first set of recommendations, which is an awful lot of officers sitting around a table doing an awful lot of talking, is how that's going to improve air quality whatsoever. And the recommendations that you make in section 17.4 is about introducing LTNs. I don't care how you describe them. They're about diverting traffic out of certain roads into other roads. And I don't see how that's going to improve air quality in Medway, because people aren't going to go, oh, do you know what, I can't drive down that road, I'm going to get a bus. When the buses don't run on time, you can't get a bus at a time that actually suits you. You've got to take your kids to school, you've got to go do your shopping. I know, I'm going to walk instead. I'm going to drag my 3 kids the 1.5 miles to school in the pouring rain. This is almost fantasy proposals in order to achieve that. So I am not surprised by the outcome of this report. I do not see how anything in this report is going to improve air quality at all. I think all you're going to do is make residents' lives an absolute misery. And the fact that we've been talking to Camden Council, probably the most car-hating local authority in the country, who've adopted the World Health Organisation's NO2 standard of 2 microns, is absolutely preposterous. When in the world are we ever going to get down to that type of level, unless every single person drives an electric vehicle? But then, of course, we can't generate enough power in this country to actually fuel every vehicle. I've got one more point to make, and this is about consultation. I know there's a lot in this report about consulting with residents, but my experience, and probably my biggest single disappointment about being a local councillor, apart from being in opposition, of course, is the fact that where we set out to do consultation, we tend to ignore that consultation. We plough ahead because we've decided that's the policy we want to go ahead with. And I think you've correctly identified potential pinch points around lacks of trust on consultation. You know, if people consult and say, no, we don't agree with this, the council goes ahead and does it, it just destroys trust in us as elected members as well. So, you know, I enjoyed reading the report. I genuinely enjoyed reading, and I spent a lot of my lunchtime today reading it and researching it. But I don't think this type of action will improve air quality. The one thing that would improve air quality, if we have the political guts to do this, is to think about banning the most polluting vehicles driving through the core, from Strood to Raynham. Not having cameras up so people can buy a pass and then still drive, but actually, and I think Councillor Campbell, you and I have discussed this in this committee, actually having a high air quality zone where we ban the most polluting vehicles from the core. That would improve air quality. But nothing in here will improve air quality over time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Obviously, we're going to pass to two officers just to respond to a couple of points. I just want to make clear this was a cross-party task group. So, you know, you can speak to your colleagues in your group on... There was at least 2 spaces for the Conservative group, even if they weren't necessarily filled. And again, I'm sure that you will probably reference what the conclusions say in terms of recommendations on the LTNs, but I feel it's actually probably worth me passing to officers just to respond on some of those points.
Thanks. And I know Councillor Lawrence will be very pleased that on certain aspects I agree with him. You know, the whole point of air quality is this large journey, and the report recognises that there's lots of factors and there's lots of drivers, and he correctly identified those changes in the Euro rating of vehicles are a massive contributory factor. And also, you know, in terms of the council's fleet, this administration implemented the aspiration of Councillor Filmer to have Euro 6 RCVs. And so our big, substantial, heavy fleet is now at least at the latest standards. I think collectively we want to aspire to be more. Part of the narrative that we've got is because we do monitor, we can see that journey and we can see those things down. However, air quality decidedly works on a macro level. It's very hard to attribute direct things to specific aspects. And lots of the work that we put in place, it's very hard to directly attribute improvements to it. However, bits and pieces that we've done and lots of the projects have all taken us on that journey. You're right to identify that we need to engage more. And certainly in terms of the air quality, lots of the points, I know you say they're about talking, but they're about making people come and have a conversation with us. Often air quality is conflated with other topics, whether that's climate change, whether that's Michael and the wonderful work he does with buses, but it's a very specific topic and it warrants its own viewpoint. And it is something that is scientific and it is something that's open to challenge. And as you said, it's something that needs to live in the real world. So I certainly agree with your assessment, that initial point, we need to recognise that took place in a big world.
Thank you, Ian. I really appreciate that. I mean, I am struck by the issue around asthma, particularly. But once again, my research seems to suggest that diagnosis for asthma are actually going down in the UK. And I can only find anecdotal statistics on emergency admissions for asthma attacks is also going down. So I think asthma might have been an issue, and there's this number of 28,000 deaths caused by pollution, but actually they're not actually 28,000 people dying because of air pollution. They actually refer to the potential loss of life in terms of the number of years someone might live. So I think there's some emotive numbers in the report, but I'm grateful for you to you for accepting some of the issues that we have to come up with real world solutions. Otherwise, people are just going to think we're wasting everyone's time. Thank you.
And that was discussion, I mean, in particular around LTNs, there was quite a lot of discussion actually from the members to actually say Medway isn't London, it isn't inner London, it doesn't have the public transport alternatives and it doesn't have the public transport behaviours. And I think it's clear in the conclusions that it does reach in the end that, you know, it's not necessarily likely that LTNs are going to be the be or end, are likely to be a full-scale proposal for Medway, but then there may be some elements, some little bits that we may incorporate in specific areas, but that needs community consent. I think I'm now going to pass to Councillor Campbell. So, Michael, did you want to come in at that point?
Only to say that I think you've covered those points, Chair. I think when we gave the examples of LTNs around the country, we were quite careful to put forward some of the negative feedback that came forward as part of that as well. And I think we do reference in the report some of the issues that they experience on the boundary roads from these LTNs. So we did provide members of the group with information to say that actually, yeah, in some cases, it's made the situation a lot worse on the boundary roads, and air quality hasn't necessarily improved in those locations. So just to clarify that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. I can't see my notes and people's faces at the same time, so I'll try. You know, it's interesting. Every time I hear you speak about this, Councillor Lawrence, I always feel it's more ideologically driven than anything else. I genuinely think that. And I think no, let me finish. You can come back to me at the end of this. Let me finish. LTNs especially, I think most of the time people talk about it. There is a certain level of fear-mongering about it. It's not, when people talk about how they would like their ideal neighborhoods, they are effectively describing LTNs. They want to be able to walk to places. They don't want speeding traffic there. It's got to be safe areas. They want like cleaner surroundings. It's not, there isn't this disconnect. So I don't understand the suspicion about LTNs. Now, they're not the entire solution to the problem of road safety and air quality. They are part of the solution. And I actually thought, like has already been said, the report is fairly balanced. You've actually captured what the challenges are, where it does work, where it doesn't work, like all the other, other roads where the traffic is pushed. They've captured all of that. So I think it's part of the solution. It doesn't work everywhere. It has to be selectively deployed. It has to be kept open for consideration and feedback, and that needs to be measured as to how things are working. So the impact on disabled people, for example, the impact on elderly people. So, but there is a place for it. There is a place for LTNs. And what else do I have here? Just bear with me, please. I can't actually read. Yeah, so I often feel that it's ideologically driven. People are so suspicious about anything that seems to curtail the perceived freedoms and rights of motorists. And there is a huge part of that, and especially any mention of anything that's sort of ULEZ related, people kind of just seem to lose their minds a little bit about it. Anyway, I'm a huge fan. What I would say is, again, in Medway, the school street schemes, for example, we really, really need to be open about the feedback. There are things that sometimes do need improving. There are areas where taxis, for example, need to be able to get in and out to help people. I do think we need to be more open to that. In terms of asthma, you use the word emotive. Now, for the people who do have asthma or have a tendency to that, air quality can be life transforming. My auntie, I watched her suffer with asthma. I grew up in Mumbai, big city, traffic everywhere, very polluted. She could not breathe. I have seen her on the ground, and we've all felt quite distressed. We didn't know how to help. They had to up and move away to a rural destination, away from the traffic, for her to have like a livable life, basically, because she would just not be able to breathe every day. So we do have to look past the statistics on this. We do have to look at quality of life and air quality. And when you look at the data in the report, it does show demonstrable improvement in places. It doesn't show it everywhere, doesn't show uptake everywhere.
As officers have said, what happens is when you push the traffic out, air quality gets worse on the periphery. So what are you saying to those people? Oh, sorry, I've got my LTM, but you're going to have to put up with more air quality.
So I think there is the wider picture to look at. We have to look at more people cycling. We have to look at more people taking public transport and the factors behind that. It's just, no, but you have to start somewhere. You have to have a vision. We can't always be stuck in a little square box to say, this is where we are, this is the best we can do, we can never get past this. Sometimes you have to have that ambition and you have to step forwards to it. The solutions then will evolve. It's not a perfect solution. And I don't think LTNs or all of this is the entire solution. I've said that repeatedly. It is part of the solution. We have to try all of these measures. If you think of a series of measures simultaneously progressing at different pace, achieving the end goal, that's the way to look at it. So it doesn't serve anybody to just dismiss ideas like this or measures like this. You're of course right to scrutinize and ask questions, and I think we should do that. But I don't think sort of just dismissing it is helpful. I do want to say one thing about the task force. Sorry, can I just read my... Yeah, the report. I would have really liked to see some kind of tangible push action about doing something about the diabolically bad situation of public transport. And I know Councillor Field is very passionate about this. That really is such a big part of all of this. Like, if you don't have a functional, usable bus system, and I've tried to use the buses in Medway and they've been awful. You can't it's really bad. So that's a big part of what needs to happen. Now, I don't fully understand, I'll admit, what the council's powers are in terms of this, because I know Arriva is a private company and they will be profit-making by definition. But there's got to be something, and I would really like this report, this task force, to kind of really come to grips with the fact that something needs to happen. I don't know what that is, and perhaps I'm being naive or ignorant, but I feel like that is a big part of what we're trying to do here, and I would like to see that reflected in any recommendations made to Cabinet.
Can I just indulge you with the response on the I'm ideological? I came up with a very pragmatic solution in my right? And you ignored that. So I'm not ideological. What I'm more concerned about is, and Ruth's going to hate me for raising this, but I've become very animated about the Fairview School Street scheme, where lots of elderly residents are effectively trapped in their homes, and I'm now having a bit of a battle trying to get things issued, where there's been no incidents involving children and there's no demonstrable evidence that there's an air quality problem. But we still went ahead with the School Street scheme, despite 2 rounds of consultation where residents said, we don't want this. So if that makes me ideological, then I'm ideological. But actually, I've come up with a very pragmatic solution in my opening comments. So, you know, am I ideological? I don't know. I'm trying to be pragmatic. I'm trying to be principled about this. I've been very consistent on my line around all of these types of issues. And, you know, I think when you talk about your auntie in Mumbai, I'm not quite sure how that is relevant to Medway. It's a personal experience, a personal anecdote. And also, when I talk about being emotive about asthma, what I'm actually trying to be, and I think you guys have accused me of being too data-driven, but I want to be more evidence-based, so that we make good decisions that stand up to really good scrutiny. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for
that. I think we're quite in, you know, this is a good discussion, a good debate, so I'll let the two of you continue.
My experience growing up in Mumbai is entirely relevant, because for anybody who suffers from asthma, that's relevant to them. And why is it not relevant here? But my point is, I understand that the reality in Mumbai is not connected to the reality in Medway. But what I'm trying to say is if you magnify the problem, that's where we'll be headed. That's how urban centers, unregulated growth of urban centers, and when there is no effort to work on environmental measures, there's no effort to think about air quality, and it's all just rampant development, that is where we will end up. I think it's entirely relevant. I mean, you can dismiss it, but it is relevant to people who live with asthma. It's just a matter of scale as to how much people suffer from that.
Yeah,
No. And in terms of the ideological thing, okay, yes, you did come up with some practical solutions, and that specific thing, I'm not aware of that school. It's not in my ward, so I don't know the details of that. But yes, that's why I said we need to keep those schemes very open to feedback and consultations. And we have to tweak it as we go along. We have to be open to tweaking it because it won't be exactly right. And yeah, in schemes around the country, some have worked, some have not worked. But what I mean by saying ideologically is I seem to sense a blanket objection from you to all things related to air quality or environmental matters. I genuinely think that sometimes what you're saying is none of this works or none of this is in any way relevant or worth pursuing. And that's, I guess, what I'm objecting to. What I'm saying is, yes, we should look at evidence. Yes, we should look at what the current reality is. But I think we should also look at where we are headed and where we are likely to head if we don't intervene.
Thank you. Chair, I mean, I think, look, where air quality is improving anyway in the UK and in Medway. The data shows that. That is because vehicles are cleaner, more people are converting to EV, albeit that seems to be plateauing. And so that is actually improving air quality. So the reference to Mumbai 25, 30 years ago is just not relevant. I'm really sorry, it's just not relevant. So, that's why I make that point. I think what I am open to, and if people want to use buses, okay, and we can encourage them to use the bus because actually we've got a good service that meets their needs, that goes at the time they want to travel, then we should be promoting those. I'm very happy to promote all forms of transport. The reality is today, the buses don't run conveniently. How many people in this room actually came on a bus today? Well done. Okay. No, he didn't. No. So I make my point. We've got one member of the... well done, Councillor Bowen. We got one member who sacrificed her evening to come here on a bus, and you'll probably be getting a lift home. Yeah, right, exactly. So what I'm saying is I'm trying to be pragmatic. I recognise the work that's gone into the report. I will be having words with Councillor Brake when I see him next. And I recognise the officer input into this. And, we've done research, but I do think let's start in the real world, not the fantasy world where everyone gets a bus or we all walk, or during the winter we ski because we're going to do it. Let's start in the real world and build solutions from that. But take a look at with improvements in technology, what's that going to do to air quality over time that we then don't have to put residents to lots of angst and inconvenience.
Thank you. I think this is a good segue to mention that the local transport plan public consultation is live at the moment. So if people want to get involved with that, who are watching here today, I'd certainly suggest that. It's been a very interesting discussion between Councillor Campbell and Councillor Lawrence, but I've now had what is interesting actually is actually to see how the thoughts are developing and actually how a task group and a committee can think and adjust. But it's certainly a critical issue. But I'm now going to move because I've now had an indication from another councillor to actually come into this discussion. So I'm going to invite Councillor Cook to come in here.
I don't know if I'm coming into the discussion or moving on to a different area, but I'm really fascinated to hear the conversations about things are improving, and I've heard that said, and things don't just improve because technology gets better. Technology gets better because people ideologically respond to things that they want to change. And so technology in EV has improved because fossil fuels are decreasing, and because we know that we want a country and a world that looks and feels and is better to live in. And so I wanted to come in on partnership working because there are fundamental things on here that won't change unless we continue to set our sights on a world we want for our children and deliberately choose to do that. And I was really struck in the report by how much partnership work there was in here that we as a council ourselves can't control, but rely on the kind of partnership work that we often talk about in this committee, about relationships with our bus providers, for example, with wider external facilities and organisations, because I guess fundamentally, whatever you believe about the place of the car in society, I want my children to grow up in a world that continues to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And so I want a bus fleet that is moving to electric, and I want there to be kind of things like I was intrigued in freight recognition scheme. So how do we bring others along with us to implement these recommendations? What leadership do we play as a council in bringing these recommendations into practice? Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone want to come in and comment on that from the officer side? And then after that we'll go to Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, completely take the point there in terms of the partnership working, and that's something that has really ramped up over the last couple of years, particularly with our bus operators. We now have a bus service improvement plan. We have an enhanced partnership with our bus operators, and there's a very close working relationship there with them. It's a two-way relationship, so in terms of what the operators can provide, but that is also balanced by what we as a local authority can provide. And that is part of our responsibilities are around the management of traffic around our network, because a lot of bus punctuality issues are in fact caused by general traffic congestion through Medway. So with the plans we're developing, local bus infrastructure plan, we are developing plans to address those fundamental issues of traffic congestion as part of our contribution to our partnership. So that's just one example of where we are working very closely. And under Councillor Curry's leadership there, we are driving that forward along with all the other initiatives that we're putting forward in terms of bus punctuality.
Thank you very much. No, that's useful to know. And obviously we have those discussions with Councillor Curry as we're there. I'm going to pass over to Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a small point. A few years ago, when I was the mayor of this borough, I had great pleasure to launch a series of Arriva eco buses. State-of-the-art, beautiful machines they were, and I was allowed to fulfil a boyhood dream, actually driving one around the car park. Sure, I shall never forget. But my point is that these all eco buses and those heralded as the way forward. Now, at the time, I was friendly with the commercial manager of Arriva in this area, who's now moved on. But after about 6 weeks, these super-duper eco buses were no longer in Medway. So I asked him where they were, and he said they'd been instructed to move them to Sheffield because the restrictions in Sheffield were far more stricter than the restrictions in Medway. So I'm thinking to myself, if Sheffield can wield this big stick to the Arriva, why can't Medway?
That's a very good...
Answers on a postcard, please.
It's a very good point, and I'm sure we will be looking to what the impacts of the bus services bill, which is just passing through Parliament, and what that can give to the town going on to the future. I haven't seen anyone else indicate at this time, but Councillor Williams has just snuck in there.
Just a quick one. Thank you for the report and all the work the task group put into it. Obviously, I'm all for anything that can be done to improve air quality in Medway. I've got concerns about the AQM at Four Elms Hill. With the amount of houses being planned to go on the peninsula, with the expansion of Kings North Power Station, Kings North Business Park and also at Grain as well. It's putting more traffic onto the Four Elms area, and I think it's obviously going to cause more traffic. There's going to be more pollution. I just can't see how we can solve that when we've got one road in, one road out with increased traffic, increased lorries. The bus service, I think people would use the bus service from out on the peninsula if it actually turned up. I've actually had quite a few instances where you go and catch a 191 to go into town to do whatever you're going to do, and it doesn't turn up. And I speak to people every day. The 133 at the Cliff, is that the same? It just doesn't turn up. So to get people to go on buses to relieve the traffic, they've got to really improve that bus system. But I am worried about the Four Elms quality because the actual pressure of the amount of traffic is going to be going through there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. That's very useful. Is there anything to respond there on the specific issues around Four Elms Air Quality Management Area?
I know it's cold comfort, but the great thing about having the management area is we know what's going on, you know, and in terms of your colleagues' comments, that's going to be backed up or refuted with evidence. And that's the most important thing. So when we have these colleagues and the proposals for those developments, there's actually going to be that litmus test about what that's having in that area. So I know it's only holding a mirror up to the situation, but it's really important we've got that. It provides us with that metric so that we can judge what actions need to be taken to ensure that the aspirations of this report and the wider air quality action plan deliver on what I think are shared aspirations about maintaining the air quality in that area.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. I agree with that. Yeah, I am worried about cars as well, but actual Kings North is expanding massively, isn't it? So, as you say, if we can keep an eye on it and see what it's actually causing on Four Elms Hill, that can only help, and we can try and address the problem. Thank you for your...
Was there any other member at all? Councillor Campbell.
Can I just suggest that, I mean, there's been a theme, everyone's talking about public transport as well. So can we add a recommendation to this that, yes, we are happy with the recommendations made here, but can we also ask for better working with public transport providers to improve reliability as part of the bigger picture? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that can be added. Thank you very much. Is there any other member indicating? Otherwise, I'm going to go to proposal to the Vice Chair.
So the committee's considered the report set out in Appendix 1 and provided comments. The committee approves the content and recommendations of the report that fall within the remit of the committee, refers it for consideration by Cabinet on the 18th of November 2025, with the additional recommendation that we work with public transport operators to improve reliability.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. And is that agreed? Great.
Sorry, I'd like to record my dissent on the recommendations under 17.4, which is the low traffic neighbourhoods. I'm happy to support the other two sets of recommendations because they're talking shops, and if officers want to spend loads of time talking, that's down to them. But the actual implementation of low traffic neighbourhoods, I'm not happy with. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to call for a short 5-minute break here. Thank you. Thank you all. Welcome back. Okay, the next item is the Get, Kent and Medway Working Plan, and that will be introduced by Dan Ratcliffe.
Good evening, thank you. So the Get, Kent and Medway Working Plan, which is snappily titled, was a requirement listed in the Get Britain Working White Paper that the government released in November of last year. And the goal of the plan was to look at how we could increase economic activity and get the employment rate to 80%. And just to give some context to that figure, if you look at Medway, the economic inactivity numbers, if you take away the people who are retired or students, you're left with a figure of about 35,000, just under, who are economically inactive. And that group will be made up of people who are carers, of adults and children, who are long-term sick, unemployed, and a variety of other reasons for economic inactivity. So the plan looks at the range of challenges and opportunities that exist in terms of how we can improve economic activity. And it looks at lots of the key drivers, which are all there. One of the key diagrams in the report is diagram 3.5, which tries to explain how this sort of fits into the infrastructure of a variety of boards and activity that takes place in this agenda. And how this seeks to bring together a wide variety of other key work and documents, for instance, a local skills improvement plan and the work and health strategy recently released. The plan has 5 key themes that came back time and time again from the variety of consultations undertaken. And they focus on the individual, focus on employers, look at training and work supply, look at the wider determinants of health and how they impact work, and operate as a system. What I would also add about the report is there is an action plan in there, and there are actions underneath each of those key themes and priorities. But the report is obviously very rich in data, very rich in information. It picks up on a lot of the challenges, but it is also a starting point. And what's really key is that the next stage of work is that we look at the action plan, we work with the stakeholders who helped us write the plan and ensure actions are developed. Those actions that are there won't be enough to deliver those priorities and themes on their own, so they need further development to lead to sort of tangible action. Blend it with new potential government schemes, blend it with our own initiatives that we're bringing forward in terms of area of concern, such as NEETs, for example, and try and connect that together in the most sensible way. I think the only other brief thing to add that's not clear perhaps in the report is that recently another key pillar of the Get Britain Working white paper was the Connect to Work scheme, and that's a large-scale employment programme that started a couple of months ago and has had some early really good uptake within Medway, and that's a really key part of the Get Kent and Medway Working plan. Thank you.
Any member? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. It's really interesting to read the report, especially the data around the demographics and where unemployment sits and things like that. And I'm actually really passionate about this because one of the things I did several years ago was I set up a job club at my church through a national charity called Christians Against Poverty. And I ran that for a couple of years, and it was all about supporting people who have been out of the workforce for a long time back into employment. And the main thing we found that, of course, the charity gives you resources of, interview skills and CV and all of that. But the main thing we found was that it was around the peripheral issues that people needed support, not necessarily with job applications and CVs. It was just all the difficulties around it. So like in the report, it says about if someone's a carer, if someone doesn't have the right transport, doesn't have money to buy the right clothes. So we ended up doing a lot more work around that with a group of volunteers. I've also had dealings with RBLI. They do sort of employment support work, Shore Trust. And really, these really small, almost micro groups of people who are able to really drill down into individual support needs, they have phenomenal success. But that data doesn't look great because it's such a small group of people. So in my job club, I would get 3 or 5 people at a time who would come in, and I could only do one every 3 or 4 months. But we managed to help them all, you know. But that's not great data. So it's so much, and I think sometimes when you look at reports like this, the national picture and the factors behind it are so huge. Like, where do you begin? Let's go down to primary education. Let's look at funding for that, you know, skilling up from there and then going to secondary. There's so much here you have to look at. Carers, what's the strategy around carers? It's a huge workforce out there who can't work because they're carers. That's also something I have experience with. I couldn't work for several years because I was a carer. So it's really difficult. So I want to see us, and sometimes you have to break through that bureaucratic institutional barrier and really look at those individual small groups and what those needs are. So I'd be really curious to see what us as Medway Council, what we can do to support these really small groups to do more of the magic with what they do with people, you know, like really supporting individuals. And in terms of employers, I mean, it is really hard for small employers to figure out what to do. So I've just had work experience requests from year 12 students coming through to my office. And they asked me whether I can take students from special schools with children with SEN and things. And genuinely, I panicked because I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can offer the right environment. I don't know if I can support them the right way, you know? And I wouldn't want to bring these children in and make them feel threatened or uncomfortable or anxious or anything like that. So I can only imagine if I set up a small family business, like how do I employ children with specific needs? So I think maybe the big employers, you kind of expect that they have to do better. But smaller employers, it's really tricky, you know? And my experience with women as well, so many women are knocked out of the workforce. Again, personal experience, because you have children, you want to raise families, and all your education's kind of gone to the bin and you're out. And small micro businesses, again, that's incredibly useful to get women back into the workforce, to be economically active. So important, like stuff that starts on the kitchen tables. That's so powerful. But again, there's so many barriers. People don't know how to make business plans. Like, where do you start, you know? How do you do marketing? How do you do social media? How do you grow your business? If you don't know, you just don't know. You got to start somewhere, and you don't even know where to look for help. So I'm more interested in this report about that kind of granularity of support that we can offer rather than the bigger strategic picture, because there's so many forces beyond our control. We can't really do anything about that, you know? Okay, that's my topic.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Excuse me. Thank you for this report. I've read it with quite a bit of interest, and there's one or two or more points which I'd like to raise and ask questions about. For example, what formal governance arrangements are in place to coordinate the development and sign-off of the Get Kent and Medway working plan across all the bodies which are named there? Secondly, how will the council ensure its role is not diluted under Kent County Council, as they are the accountable body? And what contingencies exist if one or two or more of the signatory bodies or stakeholders decline to endorse the final plan? Also, moving on into section 3.3, what baseline data will be used to measure progress against the 80% employment target and all the other outcomes that you mentioned? And finally, well, no, not finally, how will the council ensure that local voices, including employers, service users and community groups, are meaningfully engaged? And really, finally, will elected members have the opportunity to scrutinise the draft before the final sign-off?
I think that's 4 points.
Is it 4 points? Well, maths never was my strong point.
So
that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of response to those issues, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to answer Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Kemp in that order, if that's okay. So yeah, thank you for those points. Really, really valid. And I think one of the things I always try and recognise is there are an amazing amount of voluntary sector organisations working in this space, doing amazing things day in, day out. And when we, in the last round of Share Prosperity Fund, we sort of split the money into quite small pots, which we were to try and encourage those voluntary sector partners to take up some funds, and we had some great outcomes from that. I think in terms of how we get that support right for each individual, one of the exciting things about the new Connect to Work programme is that's exactly what it's designed to do, is look at the barriers into work and work on them one by one, and fully accepting a lot of them are quite complicated and you won't be able to solve them all at once. So we'll solve one problem at a time until we can get you into a position where you can take work. And again, full-time work is not going to be for everybody. If you've got caring responsibilities and you've got 8 hours where you think you could feasibly work, we'll try and find a job for 8 hours. We'll try and make that approach really personalised. That's absolutely the goal, and it's the biggest scale of that type of employment support we've seen. So, as I say, we're only in sort of month 3, really, but really excited for what that can bring and the opportunities there. In terms of small employers, micro employers, absolutely appreciate and agree with the huge importance they have and how difficult it is for employers. One of the things that came back in the consultation time and time again, and something I've spent a lot of my time on, is how we can strip back the wiring of the complicated skills system and make it easy for employers. Now we do that with my sort of small team in a way where we do go out to businesses and create tailored bespoke skills plans, and that's where we will go through every initiative that is basically out there and talk about all the college offer, the schools offer, universities. We'll talk about training providers, we'll talk about everything and work out what is most appropriate for that business to take forward, create an action plan, follow that through. So that happens. Clearly there are 14,000 businesses in Medway and I have a small team, so we're working through where we can. But where we have businesses that are really keen to help, we will meet with them and we'll work out the way they can help best. So if you've got an hour a month, if you've got a day a month, if you've got a day a week, we will find something useful for that business to do in the world of education, in the world of skills, and the world of training. And we need to do more of that, and part of this work with the plan is to look at how can we tie up employer engagement so much more coherently so employers aren't getting bombarded with lots of different phone calls from lots of different organisations wanting slightly different things in the same industry. It's a big problem. So that is absolutely something that's really key and one of the key themes. And I think just in terms of the small and micro startup issues, our economic development team do have some startup support. I'm not an expert on that, but we do try and signpost, and through adult education we also look at how we can support people starting up from some of our creative courses or some of our employability courses. So it's absolutely a really important theme, and I think self-employment and entrepreneurship are really great ways into employment if you've been out of work for a while or you've stopped for caring responsibilities. So that's something we need to sort of pick up. Okay, I think that covers that. So Councillor Kemp, thank you for your questions. So what maybe I should have said at the start, apologies, is we were set a very tight timescale by government where we had to have, we were sort of set the task late March and had to have a draft in by the 31st of July. Mm-hmm. So this has gone to Cabinet. So I appreciate that's the backward way round, and I apologise. But that was required in terms of the timescales of getting this signed off. But as I said, this plan is the start. This is not sort of this gives us all the data and information and the key themes, and our job now, the work starts now really, which is turning that plan into something tangible that creates those outcomes. So in terms of those specific questions, the 4 bodies involved, so 4 people had to sign it off: Kent County Council, Medway Council, the Integrated Care Board and the Job Centre Plus have signed it. They were consulted the whole way through. All 4 partners worked together to make this happen. And that will be a theme of the whole plan. Ultimately, we have to keep working together to make that happen.
But how will you ensure the council ensure its role is not diluted by KCC? You haven't answered that one.
Yeah, no, I'm coming. So I think that's really predominantly through relationship. I think that's also through the fact that we set certain things throughout the plan, that also, although we're not the accountable body, we had to sign it, we are key signatories, and we are responsible for the Medway portion of the plan. So ultimately, that is something that I'm working on a day in, day out basis, working very closely with colleagues in KCC to make sure that's not diluted. And that will also be achieved through the governance of how this moves forward, which is something that, which is another question now coming to. So the governance, that is something that is not absolutely crystal clear finalised, because there are a few options. On that document in the table in 3.5, we have the Kent and Medway Employment Task Force, we have the Strategic Partnership for Health and Economy, we have the Kent and Medway Economic Partnership, and it sits somewhere in amongst all three of those. So what we're just trying to establish at the moment is which one of those is the best vehicle. They all have slightly different priorities, they all have slightly different goals, slightly different memberships. So to make sure the governance is really strong, so that can't be an issue.
Yeah, and what about the baseline data to measure the 80% employment target and the other thing you mentioned there?
Yep, so the baseline data is drawn from, I've got a data appendix here, which is basically where all of the data in the report's drawn from, and that's where we need to continue to use. But basically, it's the labour force survey from the Office of National Statistics. That is the baseline data that was used for the majority of this, but we have a data appendix for all of the different data sets in there, and that's what we've got to continue to monitor against.
I'm not quite sure it really answers the question, but never mind. And what about the last point about will elected members have the opportunity to scrutinise this before it's finally signed off?
So,
come back to this committee, or?
Yeah, we can come back to the committee. As I say, it has gone to Cabinet, so apologies, it's a bit flipped around. But absolutely, we can keep coming back to Cabinet, back to ONS as it progresses, and welcome comments and feedback throughout the whole lifetime of the plan.
Okay.
Do you want me to revisit the data question? Sorry if I didn't quite answer that correctly.
I said what baseline data will be used to measure the progress against the 80% target?
So the baseline data...
You're not going to hit 80% in one go, are you?
No, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm there. So actually, one of the slight foibles of the data we've got is there's two different measures of which the economic activity, the employment rate, can be measured. In one, we're already at 80%. In the other, we're at sort of 78%. So that's the data we measure against both. Obviously, if we get to 80 in both, we want to surpass that. But that's the data. There is a data set of where we are and where we need to get to. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Cook, please.
Someone's still up. There we are. Wonderful, thank you. I think it was an absolutely fascinating report. I work in this area. I have older teenage children. It's absolutely fundamental for where we are as a society and for our nation. And there were four sort of key things that jumped out at me. The first is the stark statement in 2.79 of all principal towns in Medway have children in child poverty. Like that gets me in my gut, and everything we do is significant in that. There are huge amounts of work going on at the moment in the fact that schools have become social providers and prescribers. There was something I wrote in the previous comment around asthma, about school involvement there. You know, it's a significant thing that our skills providers are first filling our social action. So I guess the question for this committee is, how are we partnership working again with wider work to ensure that our skills industry isn't being hampered by other things that we as society are working on. The second was a comment about contextualisation that I didn't see in there, which is the significance of the selective system. So our children in Medway and Kent, regardless of the value that you may or may not place on selective system and whether that is different or not in your opinion, it is true that our children are in a different context to that nationally. So our young people are potentially more likely to be pushed towards a particular outcome than perhaps others might. And I know that is something, you know, people may have their own views on, but when there are then comments in there around vocational training having higher entry points, or more students coming in without level 2 into vocational training, I wonder how we've taken the context of the education system in Kent and Medway into understanding there. I was really interested in the comments on soft skills, employability skills, and we know that there is a huge piece of work happening around generational understanding and training for employers in understanding Gen Z and the reality of the COVID generation, but also the digitally native generation, the generation that have learnt to monetize their hobbies. So more and more young people already are starting businesses as teenagers. So we have an increasing number of young people who might not have a traditional outlook to the workplace because they've come in through a different culture. And actually the culture gap between our Gen X and our Millennial and our Gen Z is significant. And in the report, it felt a lot like they need to learn to be like us. And I wasn't sure how much was happening to bridge the gap between the reality of the skill set that our young people have and the skill set that our employers might be expecting, and how we can bridge those gaps around what we're both looking for. And lastly, just to come back to that comment on why people who are providing care are being included as a target group, and the cost-saving work that's been done in terms of if we are focused on those people joining the workforce, how are we then covering the gaps of the social care provided by those people? So loads more I could have asked, but I'll stop on those 4. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the first question is for the wider committee. In terms of the contextualisation around the selective system, I think that's a fair point that's probably not recognised in the report, and that's something that we can consider in the working groups that follow. I think that's a strong theme in the post-16 review work, so that's something I can talk to education colleagues about how we better incorporate that into the plan and the work. And what I will say is education colleagues, and particularly sort of the NEAT team, etc., will be really key partners in this work. I think in terms of the soft skills and the sort of culture gap, last year at the Business and Skills Summit we had the first panel was on Gen Z and how you can integrate into the workplace, and it was the most lively panel of the day. It attracted a huge amount of interest, a huge amount of thought from businesses with a wide variety of different viewpoints. And I think it's something that is a challenge, and I think it's something that employers have to work on. There's probably a meeting in the middle, really. I think we do get a lot of comments from businesses saying that young people come in and they can't answer the phone, or you know, they're distracted by their own phones and things. So, but absolutely, we know that Gen Z and young people bring a myriad of skills that aren't currently in the workplace, and we also know that a lot of the jobs that they will move into don't even exist yet. So we absolutely have to get, I think, the careers piece right, and we've got the Kent and Medway Careers Hub, which is working in this space with all of our schools to make sure that the careers education that young people are receiving is accurate and appropriate and to the highest quality it can be, and that's ongoing work. And businesses are a huge part of that. There's a requirement to increase work experience for schools now in place. So I think that whole sort of education and business piece is something we've got to just keep on working on. And I probably didn't make this clear enough at the start, so apologies. In terms of the target group and people who provide care being in that target group, then they're not really. So what my point was about the 40,000 people in Medway who are in theory in the target group, many of them for very good reasons are not going to move into work, nor will we necessarily want them to move into work. And again, it's not about moving people into work that don't want to be because they've got care and responsibilities or long-term illnesses that mean they can't. So it's caveating that 40,000 figure is actually vastly reduced to a cohort that are wanting and looking to move into work. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, really helpful. I think just two things to come back on. One is just to, point that we are anticipating, as we know, a curriculum and assessment review imminently with a white paper which we expect will follow fairly soon after. So I think it's really important that this stays live and that this work is done in conjunction with that work, because it's exactly the questions that work is trying to address around the kind of entitlement and expectation for young people now that are the workforce in the next few years. The second thing, I think, is that conversation around coaching and mentoring and the upskilling of our workforce to bridge those gaps and to create space within workplaces, because it's a huge ask of people. I see it within my own industry, which is itself education, asking someone to train someone else, let alone when that isn't your primary core industry. So how we're creating the space and capacity to come alongside our businesses to create opportunities for people to develop skill sets. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Before I come to Andrew Lawrence, Councillor Lawrence, I think Councillor Campbell, you just want to follow up on the response.
Thank you so much for allowing me, and I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to follow up on our previous exchange, Daniel. No, it's great to hear all those particular strands that you're pursuing, and that's excellent. I think you've zoned in to what needs to be done. The point I was trying to make is what we do really well in local government is we create strategies, we create procedures, then we create policies, then we create working groups, and that's layers and layers of stuff that people really struggle to access through. So the point I was making is people are out there who are incredible at reaching out to people and doing stuff. If we can find a way where we are facilitating that without ourselves doing it, because they know what they're doing and they've got better links, and sometimes if we try to do it as the council, it's just a little bit trickier, So it would be great if you could consider some sort of mapping of all the possible opportunities out there and how we can almost kind of facilitate people going to some of these different ways rather than everything happening through the council, if that makes sense.
That makes, complete sense, and completely agree. And in terms of Connect to Work, the engagement work that's happening is actually, can we get out to as many of these community groups as possible for referral routes, but also agree that we need to try and pull together without doing all the work. One of the proposed actions, I think, if we get it right, it could be a catalyst for this sort of thing, is a sort of a skills system symposium, but where, again, it needs to not be Medway Council or Kent County Council saying, look at what we're doing. It's about bringing together all of the different agents in this sort of broad and complex system we have, and listening to what's happening and how we can better promote that. And in terms of mapping, that's absolutely one of the key actions that was picked up, is that, again, there are a lot of people who are doing frontline work with residents who will know some of the employability offer, not all of the employability offer. So we've absolutely got to try and make sure it's mapped as best as possible. Bearing in mind it moves, bearing in mind not everyone will come forward and tell us what they're doing, but mapped as well as possible so that people talking to residents on a daily basis can refer to the right scheme that will get the best chance of success, whatever that looks like.
Councillor Lawrence.
Chair, actually, Councillor Hamilton had her hand up before me. You didn't see her. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Councillor Lawrence. That's very nice of you. So my questions are probably a little bit more big picture, broad brush relating to it. So the first one, it really relates to strands, themes 1 and 2. Focus on the individual, focus on employers. So in Medway, we have around 13,000 small and medium enterprises. Yep. That's around 75% of businesses operating in Medway. We also know that some of the barriers for people to enter the workforce are around the fact that we do not have inclusive employment practices. It is much easier for larger companies to implement inclusive employment practices than for smaller ones. So my key question is, what is going to be the focus to persuade and encourage SMEs to shift their perspective around that? Because that is one of the barriers, let's face it. The second question then is really twofold. So we talk about women, all right? So women, that's 50% of the population. So let's be a bit more specific here, and let's not put all women in the same category, all right? That's my first criticism of it. Second thing is that you're associating caring only with women here. And I have a really big issue with that. All right, we should be looking at it from carers' perspective, not from gender and then the roles assigned to a particular gender. All right, you are a carer first, your gender comes second. So I don't like the way it's framed. Going back to that, we have, so those who are carers contribute the equivalent of a second NHS to the active economy. So they are contributing to the economy, they're just not getting paid for it. So how do we frame that in a much more positive way and encourage those people who have got skills to recognize that they've got skills and to come into the active work space, all right? They are already working, they're already contributing to our economy. Let's acknowledge that first and then move on and work with them to see that the skills that they apply either at home or in another space can be transferred into actual monetary value as well in their pockets, not in other people's pockets, because it goes into other people's pockets because they are doing unpaid work for us, and we should recognize that. So I guess my question is, I'd like a little bit of a, reframing of some of the way this is being presented, because it's not as positive and inclusive as it could be in terms of the plan. And then finally, I'd like to understand, when we come to young people, there's no reference to young carers. Young carers are, again, contributing to our economy, but young carers are also missing out on school. They're missing out on opportunities for their skills to be developed. How are we going to move that forward so that they have an opportunity to step into the workforce on an equal footing with other young people in the future? So, yeah, it's all about, let's tackle the stigma of, small and medium enterprises can't do inclusive employment practices. They can. Let's deal with that. Let's reframe. We talk about carers first. We don't need to talk about gender. They're carers. And then let's look at how we can support young carers to enter the workspace.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. In terms of small businesses and those inclusive employment practices, absolutely agree. It's a big challenge. And it's a challenge for the business, it's a challenge for us, it's a challenge all round. And I think you've asked what the key is to shift perspective. And what we're trying to do, and again, I keep coming back to Connect to Work, but Connect to Work is probably the biggest opportunity we have right at this moment to do that. And as part of Connect to Work, there's a huge amount of employer engagement going on. And the message that we are trying to get across really strongly is actually, businesses, we're not asking you to do us a favour. We're not asking you to do anyone a favour. There is an untapped workforce with massive potential here who would like that opportunity. And if you can work with us, we'll give you the support to, I think as Councillor Campbell mentioned earlier, we'll give you the support to understand what you need to do as an employer, what you need to put in place to make this a success for everyone.
I agree that that's great, but it's about shifting mindsets. It's about shifting mindsets because before somebody steps into the interview, decisions are already being made. So we've got to tackle the mindset. As a small business, I'm sure that doesn't happen in your business, Councillor Long, but there are still some areas where mindsets need to be shifted.
I think the key is we keep going with that message, and that's something we need to sort of spread far and wide. Is something that through the local skills improvement plan, which is Chamber of Commerce driven, so they've engaged with a huge amount of businesses of all sizes, and this is something that's been picked up about. Small businesses won't have their own HR department, they might have a HR bought-in service, but there's a whole disparity there. But I think just keep going with that message that people with a wide variety of backgrounds can make a huge difference to your business. And it's producing the case studies. Connect to Work, if it works as we hope, should come up with a myriad of case studies where people making a massive difference in their business. And there are other things like supported internships, which are placements for young people with learning disabilities or autism, where they're making an enormous difference. And we've got so many of these case studies. So just wherever businesses listen, we need to try and get this message out. But of course, I do fully accept it's a massive challenge, and businesses have got businesses to run and aren't always looking where we want them to. So that's ongoing work we need to do. And need to keep that message really strong. In terms of your second point about associating caring with women in the report, I'll need to check if there's a specific point that in the report that makes that link. I'd love to reread.
Focusing on women, particularly emphasising caring responsibilities. My issue with that is that you are reinforcing stereotypes, and you're reinforcing a negative message that women are only fit for unpaid work, including caring responsibilities. It's absolutely not true, and I'd like it reframed so that it's talking about caring responsibilities first, or it's talking about women, but not linking both.
Okay, I completely agree with the point. It shouldn't read that way, so I'll try and find where it does. They are separate categories. What I will say is we were asked by government to look at specific groups, and women was one of those, so it's not something that we've decided on. That was something we were asked to look at, but carers is a standalone group. Completely agree, it should be irrespective of gender.
It's on page 113. It says, women who are unemployed, including those with caring responsibilities.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so pleased I let Councillor Hamilton go before me. Can I just say, Councillor Cook, I really thought what you added to that conversation, I hadn't thought about it from the way you described and the questions you asked, so I'm going to take that way and think about this. Can I just ask whether this report is a template that's been handed down by government, or have we actually built this from scratch, as a first question?
Not a template. It's not been. That's not the designed final version. So there is a designed final version, which should make more sense. We had certain things we had to include, but not a specific template.
Thank you. Okay, that makes that very clear. So, Chair, I think the issue here is that there are things that this report doesn't address that, in my personal view, are affecting employability and unemployment. I've noticed that the latest stats for unemployment amongst 18 to 24-year-olds in Medway is now 7.5% of the total. That's 1,600 young people in Medway who are unemployed. That number's growing, and what's worse is that cohort demographically is growing as well. So that number is going to get worse. So why is it that 18 to 24-year-olds are struggling so much to get into employment? And I don't think we actually ask ourselves that question, to be honest. So the reason being is I think this has become an issue of culture now. You know, some of us will remember the days when we left school and we had to go out and find a job, but we were prepared to go find a job. And it didn't matter what job you got a job and you took it from there. Now, more recently, and I've got two young adults who are in university. A lot of children both come from the selective system, so selective children are being pushed to university. They're going to university, but I keep asking each one of them the question, what are you going to do after university? What's your plan? And, you know, that's a conversation I'm regularly having. What I do see amongst that peer group, actually, is more young people, including from the selective system, going into apprenticeships. And I think that is a really powerful way of dealing. But here, I get a feeling we're dealing with a very different cohort in this unemployment group. I think we need to, I read the report and it's a bureaucrat's report written for bureaucrats that will keep bureaucrats employed. I don't know whether this is going to solve our problems because this number of people is growing, and I think we need to approach it from two different ways. I was a bit disappointed at some of the timescales in it. It's going to take 12 to 24 months to do some of this stuff, by which time that's 1,600 will be 1,900. And the problem with unemployment is the longer you're unemployed, the harder it is to get back into work. And I'm really focusing my comments on younger people here, because I think with older adults who are unemployed, there are different things that are driving that unemployment. So please take these comments I'm making more about younger people. I think we need to approach it from two angles. I think we need to go back to school and make sure that schools are making children, young people, ready for work. You know, I think we have to go back, and we also need to get these messages out to parents as well. You know, when you look at Medway's education achievement, it's pretty poor. You know, if you think the key stage 2, which is 11, 40% of children are basically leaving school at 11, going on secondary school, without the necessary skills to be successful at secondary school. That doesn't mean they're not going to be successful at secondary school, but the starting point is poor. When they get to 16, something like 35% of them are not getting good enough qualifications to enter the job market that exists today. However, there are lots of jobs that young people just don't want to do. So what happens is there's nothing to actually say to them, well, you have to take those jobs because that's what you're qualified to do. So what we've done as a nation over 15 years, we've just imported a lot of workers to do those types of jobs. So, you know, what's happening is we're actually almost creating the circumstances where young people stay unemployed. There's nothing driving them into training or into work. The welfare system is creating massive disincentives to work. That is the problem. So what I really would like to see is a two-pronged approach. We need to get back into schools. We need to make sure that we're creating a culture where young people understand that when they leave school, they have to go to work. We need to find a way of driving up attainment in Medway. The other thing I'm particularly worried about, especially with my young people at university, is what jobs are they going to come out to, even with a university degree? I think every one of us in this room probably knows a young person with a decent degree who's probably doing a job way below those educational outcomes. And, you know, what is that creating for the long term? So that's that rant. My next rant is for people to have jobs, we have to actually be creating jobs. And at the moment, we are not creating jobs in this country. We're destroying jobs. The number of jobs available is going down. Businesses are finding it very difficult to recruit and create jobs. The tax system is working against businesses. Anyone who actually runs a business will know all the extra costs they've had to incur this year. It's not a mystery why there is more unemployment in Medway. It's because businesses are having to let people go, businesses going to wall. I noticed a stat recently which once businesses created in Medway were surviving a certain period of time. That period of time is now shortening because they're going out of business faster than they were 3 or 4 years ago. So we haven't got the economic conditions to create employment that would make your job easier. And the other thing is the next bit of legislation that's coming along, which is the employment rights thing, will make businesses absolutely, especially picking up on Councillor Hamilton's point, is that businesses, particularly small businesses, will not want to take the risk of taking on that really difficult to place group because there are just too many risks to it. You know, I operate a small business with 16 staff. You know, I spend a particular point of time doing HR. You know, inclusive practice. We've actually got a couple of people in our business who are on the autism spectrum. And we've worked really hard to integrate those people into our business. But we're lucky to have the margin in order to do that. A lot of small businesses do not have the manpower, the time, or want to take the risk of taking people on who then can go sick from day one and all the costs associated and all the legal side of actually managing that. So I am hopeful, I know it sounded very negative, that actually you will succeed, but if you look at the last couple of years, we found it really difficult to get inward investment in Medway. Actually, probably the number of jobs in Medway has gone down. But I actually think I would like to, you know, if we wanted a real strategy, we have to get back into school and start making sure young people realise that they need to be ready for jobs. And just picking up, actually, Councillor Cook, you've made a really interesting point about the types of jobs young people want to do, you know, the content creators and the YouTube stars of the future. But it's a bit like football. You know, out of every 200 young people playing football to a certain level in Medway, probably only one will actually make a living out of it. It's the same on the content creation side. You know, the problem is, you know, there are a lot of young people who want to be content creators, okay? Well, I think you were talking about digital businesses, and it's content creators.
I wasn't saying it was about jobs that young people want to do. I was saying it's about jobs that people are now skilled for. Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about young people that have grown up digitally literate. So it's not a case of I want to be a content creator. It's a case of we in education who are doing a fantastic job, and standards in teaching have never been higher, outcomes have never been higher, but young people now have a skill set in society for jobs that society is going to need, but some of which don't exist yet because they are coming in at any rate of knots. It's not that young people are being overly picky. I was talking about a different skill set.
Okay, I'll accept that, but the problem with it is if you're leaving school at 16 or 18 and you're very good with AI is just a tool. Most of us are using AI in our everyday lives. You know, the jobs that I've heard Councillor Chris Osborne talk about creating big AI jobs, the number of people who are actually going to be working in developing AI is going to be quite small. They're going to be the computer scientists that are leaving university now, but there aren't even enough jobs for all of those. So the thing about it is children who are leaving school now might be digitally very savvy, but if there aren't the jobs for them to do, those skills are going to be lost. So
I mean, obviously, we are veering off of very much of what this item is, which is to consider the Get Kent and Medway working plan. We're now going into, you know, some broader themes that you're saying here. So I'm not sure in terms of wrapping up, Councillor Lawrence, if you've got any specific questions on this plan that you would like response for, or whether it's just comments for noting.
I've read the plan. I think we should bring back some results from this on a regular basis to this committee so that we can actually scrutinise the outcomes. I'm just concerned that the plan is not actually going to deliver what it aims to deliver. That is my biggest concern.
Is there anything you can come back on there?
I think there's just two or three quick points I can come back on. Just one, recognise you'll accept the point about timescales, but just to be clear that this isn't all we're doing. So and in terms of the 18 to 24-year-olds, I just want to give you some assurance in terms of what we're up to. So there's a few different things. One is that, again, Connect to Work, I've asked in Medway that we have a bit of focus on 18 to 24-year-olds. And out of the 35 starters we've had in the first 2 months, the biggest cohort is 18 to 24-year-olds. We're also bringing an initiative forward in partnership with the Medway Development Company to create training opportunities for 100 people, much of which will be ring-fenced for young people to take part in construction training with jobs at the end. And then just, again, schools making young people ready for work, just to assure we have the Kent and Medway Careers Hub, which has been working in Medway since 2019, doing a huge amount of work in the world of careers and ensuring young people are as ready for work as they can be, and that's a continually developing piece. But there's a massive amount of work going on there, and we've got a really engaged set of secondary institutions in Medway who are all very passionate about careers and work hard with us on that point. So just to add those, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think the questions that Councillor Kemp said are very valid ones to flesh this out and make it worthwhile. And I've actually enjoyed this conversation that's been taking place. There are many challenges. It's one of the reasons why I welcome the report. Also welcome the government initiative about getting Britain back to working. And one of the ways of doing that is through the SMEs. And also the identification that the report is doing, because you can't appreciate something unless you do identify it and then measure it, and then you've got information you can work with. My main angle I approach this is from a health and well-being point of view. So when I lost my business, I immigrated back to this country, I was homeless and almost penniless, and I did some really, and I can't think of a non-swear word to describe the type of work I did. I went to a job centre, thousands of jobs. You're told there's loads of jobs. There was one company that advertised the same job multiple times. It was double glazing. I'm embarrassed to say, because it's so dishonest. You did not get paid a wage. You could work all day long unless one of your referrals went to a salesman, and the salesman got a sell, then you got a price. So there's a lot of abuse. So unless you think in terms of getting rid of employment by reintroducing the workhouse, you know, these are issues. There is a lot of abuse in certain industries. I worked in care for 5 years. A place like I worked in literally would not survive if it wasn't for employment from abroad. And that is actually a skilled job, and very poorly paid, but it is a skilled job. You're giving people medicine, people's lives are in your hand. It also included personal care, and that, if you stop to think about what that means, there's a lot of people, most probably in this room, that just could not bring themselves to do it. Thankfully, it just didn't bother me, so I was okay. But a very abusive environment. I won't bother with all sorts of stories that I can tell you about. So we do need to care about those things. I'm sure Councillor Lawrence is a very conscientious employer. I have no doubt about that. And I'm sure that when he does interview process, it is fair. But there are occasions when it's not, and there are people that take advantage. So I'm so pleased to see a report looking at this, but also I'd like to reference to page 160. There's 2 points where it talks about focus on the employers, to try and give them support. And I'm really, really proud that this administration is giving small businesses the support it's getting now. I would urge everybody to go to the business skills showcases. I've been to the last two. I've been really galvanised talking to the people in the hallways. So I don't know if you've been, but when you go there, you will talk to people that are employers, but also you'll talk to HR, to the accountants, and this whole networking of people setting up. I wish when I started my business, I had advice like that. I actually did pay for advice, and me and another business, we actually stopped paying them because it was a sham. It really was. It was part of a con, which we didn't realise. So if you've got genuine support, it's really, really important, and we are doing that. And I just looked up the stat again, because I was impressed by this. Under the Medway Business Skills Showcase, it says we have over 14,000 businesses in Medway with an economy worth £5.9 billion. I wonder how many people realise how big it is. So there's such huge potential. So if we could keep on supporting, encouraging this environment of working together, supporting, so we can get growth, because it is a challenge for small businesses, of course, and it's not just the cost, it's literally the time. Time is money. Time, the energy, the capacity of the individual to be able to do these things and to do it properly. So really pleased about the government initiative and this report and how positive it is, although the challenges that have been described are very real as well. Thank you, Chair.
Cheers, thank you. Is that an indication, Councillor Williams? No. It is. Excellent.
Wave a pen at you, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Made very interesting reading. Just one point I picked up on page 111. It says employers said the workforce skills gap with employers, saying recruitment is a problem, citing gaps in existing workforce capabilities. 3 paragraphs down, it says, for young people, there's been a sharp decline in education provision for those who are not or perceive are not suited to traditional academic route and require places at level 2 and below. In the past, there seemed to be a lot more availability of apprenticeships for young people. What can we do to actually make it more available for people, but even more so that people who are not academic won't get left behind? In the past, you know, when I was at school, which is way back in the 60s,
40s.
you could get an apprenticeship quite easily. And if you weren't academically minded, you could still go and get a job as an apprentice, as a plumber, carpenter, this sort of thing, which is where the skills gap is. What can we do to improve the apprenticeship prospects for the people who are not, you know, haven't got the high academic qualifications?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. I completely agree. Apprenticeships are a brilliant way of helping this problem. In terms of apprenticeship numbers, they've sort of, in Medway, pretty much recovered from COVID, but they're not growing as we'd like them to. They stay quite steady, but not growing as we'd like them to. So that is an area of focus that's been part of the Kent and Medway Employment Task Force. How can we exactly do that question? How can we increase apprenticeships? It feels like I've done a lot of work in apprenticeships. I could probably talk about it for a long time. It feels like we had a big push probably 10 years ago on apprenticeships, and a lot of businesses fall in different camps. They've either tried it and it succeeds and they keep doing it. They've tried it, it didn't work and they don't want to try again, or they don't think it fits their business or their sector. There's probably other options in between. So we're trying to do some work in terms of, if you've tried it and it didn't work, can we convince you again? Because they might be more easily persuadable. We have something in Medway called the Medway Apprenticeship Advice Service, which is where we offer sort of end-to-end support to any business who wants to recruit an apprentice. The inquiries aren't massive, so definitely there is work we need to do in terms of publicising that and encouraging more businesses to consider apprentices again.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear, yeah. What I was worried about is that when you see people advertising for apprentices, they always got a certain qualifications they need. In the past, if you wanted to be a plumber, electrician and that, you didn't really need to have 10 A-levels or whatever. And I think we might be missing people there who might fall through the net. That's one thing I was worried about, really.
I think that is one of the challenges. I mean, the English and maths requirements have changed recently to help with that problem. I think an apprenticeship is not an easy thing to do. So there is challenge, and there are lots of people that don't complete apprenticeships. The sort of the retention numbers of apprenticeships is not what we'd want it to be. So I think a lot of that is trying to make sure that you get someone who will complete the apprentice. But I also agree you risk missing people. So it is a challenge, and there is sort of a bit of a working group around how can we improve apprenticeships across the whole region of Kent and Medway, and something that we can keep raising.
Thank you. Councillor Peake, did you want to come back in there quickly?
Just very quickly, so I was thinking about what Councillor Williams said, and I did want to say earlier from a health and well-being point of view. So my starting point is, I believe there is value in working just for the sake of working. It's not just about whether you can earn money, it's about pride that you have in yourself because you get up and you go to work. I actually think that's really important. It gives you structure, it gives somebody focus, it gives them a sense of who they are and what they're doing. However, obviously, if you take really badly paid jobs, you can be abused. But I think that should be a starting point. And it cannot be dismissed, the concern about young people, because it has been documented. I've read about this quite a lot. It's a discussion point, especially since COVID. There does seem to be a cultural shift that for some people it's okay. So this is not a party political thing. So I know certain people of a political persuasion may bang on about this, but I'm still going to say it when I think it is, from what I can understand, to be a challenge that we need to face. So this now links with apprenticeships. I think it's one of the great shames that in my lifetime, again, a child in the 1960s, that the whole thing about apprenticeships. Now, I'm not decrying education. There's great value in education for its own sake as well. If for no other reason, it teaches people how to think and evaluate. Because I do believe a lot of people actually don't think. They do what I call level 1, get people to think again. That in itself is worth a lot, but at the same time, there's great value in the opportunities for young people to have apprenticeships. At these skills and showcases, this subject came up time and time again. That's what made me think of it. And a lot of the companies say, well, we either are doing it, but we've got the problems that you have just described. So it's interesting to hear that again. And also, it's talking in terms, we want to expand it more. So if we can carry on with that analysis and help to create a world where having apprenticeships is held as being just as good as going to university as a worthwhile, you know, a status, if you like, for want of a better way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see no more indications. No, thank you very much for this very important paper and the useful discussions tonight. I'm going to move over to the Vice Chair for a proposal.
Thank you. So the committee's asked to note the report and the Get Kent and Medway working plan. I think I've captured the particular bits to take forward. So I've got bring back to oversight and scrutiny as it progresses. I've got focus on the impact of the selective system and curriculum and assessment reform in the next stages, and to please ensure the distinction that between women and carers is clear. I think they were the main things to carry forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think. Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the One Medway Council Performance Monitoring Report and Strategic Risk Summary, Quarter 1. This report's for noting only, so there's no officer introduction. Has any members got any issues they want to raise on this matter? Okay, I'll go to the Vice Chair for a proposal.
Members are asked to consider the Quarter 1 25-26 progress of the performance indicators used to monitor progress of the Council's priorities as set out in Appendix 1 to the report, and members are asked to note the strategic risk summary as set out in Appendix 2 to the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. On to the final item, the work programme, and Nicola will introduce this item.
Thank you. The work programme is set out at Appendix A, and changes made have been set out in Section 4.2 of the report for the committee's information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to speak on that? I'm going to move to the Vice Chair for a proposal.
Committee is asked to note the report and changes set out in Section 4.2 of the report and agree the work programme as set out at Appendix A to the report, and the committee is asked to note the action log as set out at Appendix B to the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Yep. Is that agreed? Thank you all. Thank you for your attendance tonight, and thank you to all officers and members of the public who contributed to such an excellent meeting. See you all soon in December.